Okay. Hi, good morning. My name is Ashley Booth, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I think the future is psychedelic. First, to get started, slide please. Is anyone doing the slides? There's no one at the computer. Oh, clicker. Sweet.
It's going great.
Yeah, thanks. Yay, okay. So I'm actually an oceanographer. Which popular science says, slides, just continuing. Am I pointing it at the, there we go. Okay. Wow, this is just, sure. Or, okay. Okay. Okay, so popular science says that the oceanographer is the second worst job in science. Nothing but bad news day in and day out. And I have to kind of agree with this. Being an environmentalist, it's really hard to see what we're doing to the planet, how we're harming each other, how we're harming animals, communities all over the world. And that started to change for me when I went to this place, Black Rock City, Nevada, for the annual Burning Man event. Oh, that's too many. Okay, next slide, please. And not to be cliche, but this was the first time that I did ecstasy was here at Burning Man. And I knew it was going to be a good time with a name like ecstasy, but what I was not expecting is for it to be such a profound experience for me. It opened up my heart to be able to connect with people in a way that I hadn't been able to do. It allowed me to see myself and see others, and I wanted to give out more. Slide, please. And so, over time, I started looking at, I started experimenting with other types of drugs, psychedelics specifically, and started to realize that the people that did these things and the people around me weren't what I expected them to be. The people had their stuff together, they were kind, they were open, they were curious, and it made me want to learn more about this. So before I go a little further, I would like to define what psychedelic means. Psychedelic is it's kind of a fuzzy term, but in general it means any kind of psychoactive drug that changes your cognition or perception. And it can be a catalyst for big picture thinking, both in terms of the way that you view yourself and the way that you view the world. And one of the important things that I want to point out here is all psychedelics, including MDMA, which is sometimes considered a psychedelic and other times an empathogen, are not chemically addictive. So they do, in the spectrum of different kinds of drugs, they are not addictive. And they also occur naturally in plants, fungus, and animals, and even in our own brain. Some of these things are natural neurotransmitters. So it's really interesting. And lastly, some of these things have been used medicinally and ceremonially for thousands of years. Slide. So which substances am I talking about here? Here's sort of a whole smattering, right? But what I'd like to do right now is do a quick little poll. So if you'd close your eyes, look down at your lap. Okay. So please raise your hand if you've ever done marijuana before. Okay, close your eyes and put your hands down. So that was pretty much everyone in the room. Okay, raise your hand if you've ever done ecstasy or MDMA before. And hands down. So that was maybe 60% of the room. And raise your hands if you've ever done magic mushrooms. All right, down. That was maybe 70% of the room. LSD. Again, about 70% of the room, down. And then starting to get into some more interesting ones is how many people have done ayahuasca? All right, so that's maybe more like 10% of the room. And hands down. Beautiful. Open your eyes. So congratulations, you're all criminals. But I think you're in good company here. So next slide, please. So one of the things, after realizing how many people were doing these things, and these are smart, intelligent people, and the impact that it made on my life, and so I started using my research background and my science skills to be able to do kind of a literature review, see what organizations and research groups were doing work in this area. So I'm going to briefly go over some of the things that I uncovered. Slide, please. So there's a condition that a small fraction of the population experiences called cluster headaches. And it's considered one of the worst pains that humans experience. It's these massive head pains that can go on for hours, and they can happen multiple times in a row over short periods of time. And somewhere along the way, somebody found out that if they took LSD or psilocybin, it would stop their headaches. So I'm going to read a quote here by the Daily Beast. One of the patients had cluster headaches for 27 years. He had debilitating 3-month-long cycles and wasn't responding to meds. He was devastated. He was getting 4-year cluster headaches a week. After his treatment, he had 0 headaches for 17 months. So this was a big deal for people that have this condition. And the population of people that have this have a much higher suicide rate than the rest of the population because of their condition. Slide. So MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelics, has been raising money all over the world to do studies related to drugs with using MDMA and other types of psychedelics. One of the most successful programs that they've been working on right now is using MDMA to MDMA-assisted psychotherapy to treat people with post-traumatic stress disorder. And they found that through this therapy, they were able to cure 83% of people of their PTSD with this therapy. This is after 2 MDMA-assisted psychotherapy sessions. Cured. Not on drugs for the rest of your life, not in the therapy for the rest of your life, cured. So and they're going to phase 3 trials with this right now. Slide, please. Another interesting compound is called ibogaine, which is a type of, it's from the root of the bark of an African root, and it's been used for thousands of years ceremonially, but recently they've been finding that it alleviates withdrawal symptoms and drug cravings from opiate addictions. And it can also be used as a way to help people off alcoholism, or alcohol addictions, and other types of like smoking addictions. And what's interesting is ibogaine both works on a chemical level in terms of helping your serotonin system, but it also helps on a psychological system because it is a full visionary state. It's like lucid dreaming when you take this very powerful psychedelic. And it allows you to reflect back on your life and the impacts and maybe sort through some of the trauma in your life. And so you can maybe start healing the part of yourself that you're trying to escape from that may have driven you to go into either alcoholism or maybe heroin, per se. Next, please. Another really interesting thing that I haven't found any studies on this right now, but my friend David here, before I knew him, he struggled with OCD and Tourette's syndrome. And a friend of his went through did an ibogaine treatment and was thinking, well, what if you think about Tourette's as an addiction, like you're addicted to your tics? So he went through an ibogaine treatment, and this is what he had to say about it. I went from a lifetime of suffering from OCD and Tourette's syndrome, complete with years of unsuccessful work with therapists and many, many prescription drugs, to my current state, happy, healthy, fully functioned, drug-free, and no longer diagnosable with any mental disorder of any type. I don't know about you, but I have never heard of anyone curing themselves of their Tourette's syndrome or their OCD. So we're just scratching the surface here, and there's a lot here that we need to be doing research on it. And I want to point out something. He says drug-free. And one of the reasons why a lot of these drugs have not been going through and being made into pharmaceuticals is because they're all off patent. And a lot of them you only need to use once, maybe twice, and then you don't have to use them again. Or maybe once every 17 months in the case of the cluster headaches. So this is not you're not going to be able to make money off of these drugs. So there's not much development going on right now. Slide, please. Scientific American wrote an article, End the Ban on Psychoactive Drug Research, almost exactly a year ago. And they said, the Controlled Substance Act of 1970 declared that these drugs have no currently accepted medical use and classified them as the most strictly regulated category of controlled substances, Schedule 1. The resulting restrictions create a de facto ban on their use in both laboratories and clinical trials, setting up a catch-22. These drugs are banned because they have no acceptable medical use, but our researchers cannot explore their therapeutic potential because they're banned. Next slide. But really, how safe are these drugs? So I'm going to show you a histogram of a lot of different kinds of drugs and other types of chemicals, and which were assessed for their harm, both in their physiological, psychological, and sociological effects. And if any, what do you think the most harmful drug is in a list of different kinds of drugs and substances? Next slide. Alcohol. And then it goes heroin, crack cocaine, methamphetamine, cocaine. Tobacco is kind of just there, then cannabis in the middle, and then way down at the bottom, mushrooms, ecstasy, LSD. So I can't look at this and not look at these data as a scientist and not wonder why, what the heck's going on here. So what is the problem? Well, the thing is, the ones at the bottom here, these psychedelics, it's still not zero. There are still risks associated with these things, and when we went through, when these things sort of escaped from the lab and went out into the broader culture in the 60s and 70s, people misused them. And they didn't really understand how to use them properly. There wasn't a lot of mindfulness, there wasn't a lot of guidance, there wasn't a structure to help people with these kinds of things. But I don't think this is unique to psychedelics. Our culture has a problem with overconsumption and portion control across the board. And so it's kind of like we're going through this cultural adolescence right now. Like we've made some maybe bad decisions in our past, and maybe we need to start, learning and moving forward and maturing, and start to think about these in a more rational kind of way. Steve Jobs said, "Taking LSD was a profound experience, one of the most important things in my life. It reinforced my sense of what was important, creating great things instead of making money, putting things back into the stream of history and of human consciousness as much as I could." Slide, please. So I really think that we're entering the dawn of not just the information age, but the psychedelic information age. These compounds are not going away, and the more information is out there about them, the more people are going to start taking them, and the longer time that we start to learn to use them better, we're going to have more and more elders of people that have had experiences with things, know how to use them. There's going to be more and more science, and people are going to continue to be impacted by these things, both in a medicinal way or as a psychological kind of way. And so it's time that we start to think about these things and include them as a tool in our toolbox rather than fearing them. So I founded an organization called the AWARE Project, Rethinking Psychedelics, which is about educating people and balancing the conversation about psychedelics. Slide, please. And part of this educational, we're going to be having a large bicycle day event, which is a celebration of the first time that Dr. Albert Hofmann took LSD and then bicycled home from his lab. So we're not actually going for a bicycle ride, but we are going to have a speaker series of people doing research in this area. We're going to have a visionary art gallery. We're going to have music. It's going to be a community building event in downtown Los Angeles, April 18th. The AWARE Project is also hosting a monthly salon event in Venice, California, where we bring in speakers from all over Southern California to start sparking conversation and building community. So what I'd like to end with, if we don't have freedom over our own minds, are we really free? Thank you.